Jai Hind everyone. Welcome to my YouTube channel which is Explore Yourselves, Banking and General Knowledge etc. Remembering the heroes of the 1965 war. Today as on 28th August 2025, I am remembering the heroes of the 1965 war. The Indo-Pakistani War of 1965 was brief, intense and decisive in ways far greater than its 22 days of full-scale fighting might suggest. It grew out of a long, simmering dispute over Jammu and Kashmir and escalated from covert infiltrations to set-piece battles involving armor, artillery, and air power across the international border in Punjab and the formidable ridge lines of Jammu and Kashmir. It ended with the United Nations brokered ceasefire on September 22, 1965, and the Tashkent Declaration signed on January 10, 1966. In that short span, India saw extraordinary leadership and gallantry from platoon positions hidden in the sugarcane fields to armored thrusts rolling through dust and fire to fighter pilots carving contrails into history. This is remembrance of those heroes and what they achieved. How the war unfolded. The run-up to war began earlier in 1965 with proving clashes in the run of Kuch. But the decisive spiral started in August when Pakistan launched Operation Gilwater, inserting thousands of armed infiltrators into Jammu and Kashmir to incite an uprising and destabilize Indian control. The plan misfired, the infiltrators were detected, local support did not materialize, and the Indian army mounted vigorous counter-operations in the valley and along the Pir Panjal. Pakistan then opened Operation Grand Slam on September 1, an armored infantry offensive towards Akhnur intended to sever India's lines of communication in Jammu. India's answer was to expand the conflict by crossing the international border on September 6, opening major fronts around Lahore and Sialkot, thereby diluting the pressure on Kashmir. The UN ceasefire took effect on September 22. Negotiations in the Uzbek SSR culminated in the Tashkent Declaration on January 10, 1966, hours before Prime Minister Lal Bahadur Shastri's sudden death. How the war unfolded. Against this strategic backdrop, acts of personal courage and unit grit determined outcomes at critical junctures. What follows highlights emblematic battles and the men whose names became synonyms with fortitude. The sugarcane fields of Asal Uttar, CQMH Abdul Hamid, PVC. If one image defines the 1965 war's ground fighting, it is the sight of a jeep-mounted 106 mm reconnaissance rifle stalking Patton tanks through the sugarcane around Khemkaran. Company quartermaster Havildar Abdul Hamid of 4 grenadiers, often recorded in accounts related to 8 grain/4 grain deployment in the sector, exploited the concealment of the fields, maneuvering his RCL gun to flank Pakistani armor. On September 9-10, in repeated actions under fire, he destroyed multiple M48 Pattons, showing panic and contributing decisively to the defensive line that formed the famous Patton Nagar of abandoned tanks. Hamid was killed in action on September 10 and posthumously awarded the Paramvir Chakra, India's highest gallantry award. His official citation memorializes a soldier who kept firing until he had nothing left to give. The Battle of Asal Uttar was more than one man's hammer. It was a classic of combined arms defense, minefields, artillery concentrations, anti-tank guns, and brave infantry, executed in monsoon-soaked terrain that bogged down enemy armor. But Hamid's audacity became the legend that outlived the mud and smoke. The armored thunder at Philora, Chowinda, Lt Col A.B. Tarapore, PVC. On the Sialkot front, spearheads of India's one armored division collided with Pakistani armored brigades in one of the largest tank battles seen since World War II. At the forefront rode 17 Pune horse under Lt Col Arjan Gurjorji Tarapore, Between September 11 to 16, Tarapore's regiment repeatedly engaged superior concentrations of enemy armor around Filora, Wazirwali, and Chawinda, opened under heavy fire, and despite multiple wounds to their commander, Tarapore refused evacuation, personally led counterattacks, and kept the regiment's momentum intact until he fell in battle. For his leadership and conspicuous gallantry, he was posthumously awarded the Paramveer Chakra. The Pune horses' stubborn fighting spirit under Tarapore's command helped blunt Pakistan's counterstrokes and secure gains in the Sialkot sector. Crossing the Ichagil, Lieutenant Colonel Desmond Hayde, embassy and three guard at Dograi. The Ichagil BRB canal, running east of Lahore, was a concrete obstacle, deep sea, steep, banked, and fortified. On September 6-7, a probing Indian thrust initially took Dograi, but was pulled back amid confusion. 2 weeks later, with the war in the balance and diplomatic pressure mounting, three guards under Lieutenant Colonel Desmond Hayde returned to finish the job. On the night of September 2021, Hayde led a daring night assault, crossing the canal under fire, infiltrating between strong points and fighting street to street to siege Dograi and Batapur, selling distance of Lahore's outskirts. Hayde's iron-nerved leadership earned him the Mahavir Chakra, and Dograi became a byword for raw infantry aggression disciplined by precise planning. The Mountain Gateway, Major Ranjit Singh Dayal, MBC, and the capture of Haji. In the high mist-shrouded ridges of the Pir Panjal lies the Hajipir Pass, a vital saddle that links infiltration routes into the Kashmir Valley. In late August, one para, laid on the ground by Major Ranjit Singh Dayal, executed a bold pincer against well-defended heights, climbing boat tracks at night, storming bunkers in rain and cloud, and capturing Hajipir on August 28, 1965. Dayal, a later a lieutenant general and governor, received the Mahavir Chakra for his leadership. Though the pass was returned to Pakistan after Tashkent as a political concession, the operation remains a textbook demonstration of mountain warfare and initiative. Wings of Fire, Air Power and the IAF's heroes. The 1965 war marked the Indian Air Force's first modern, sustained air campaign, counter-air strikes, close air support, interdiction, and air defense scrambles. Leading the IAF was Air Chief Marshal Air Marshal Arjan Singh, already a decorated World War II veteran. His steady hand guided the Indian Air Force through the war, earning him the Padma Vibhushan and the promotion as the Indian Air Force's first Air Chief Marshal, a nod to how decisively air power had mattered in 1965. In post-war reflections, Arjan Singh noted how quickly the service stabilized the skies after initial shocks, contesting Sargodha and supporting the army across multiple fronts. Inside cockpits, courage was personal and instantaneous. On September 7, Squadron leader Ajamada B. Tabi Devayya of Number 1 Squadron was part of a strike against Sargodha. Engaged by a Pakistani F-104 starfighter, faster and higher flying than India's mysterious Devayya fought on, shot the starfighter down and did not return. For years his feat was known more in adversary accounts than at home. India would later confirm and honor him with the posthumous Mahavir Chakra. His story is a parable of duty carried out in silence and recognized only later. Elsewhere in the skies, the fallen gnat, teeny, nimble, and pugnacious, earned its nickname Sabre Slayer. Indian pilots like the Killer brothers, Trevor and Dengil, among others, scored early and morale shifting victories against PIF Sabres. These wins, along with determined ground attack shortage, underwrote the army's ability to hold and to strike back at crucial moments. Commanders who stood firm. Wars are shaped by the quality of leadership in moments of uncertainty. Among the most influential commanders in 1965 was Lieutenant General Harbakh Singh, GOC-in-C Western Command, whose area of responsibility bore the brunt of the war. His war dispatches, later published, reveal the hard choices: when to stand, when to strike, when to refuse retreat. In the wake of Pakistan's armored push towards Khem Charan, Harbakh Singh insisted on holding the line in Punjab, a decision that contributed materially to halting the enemy and enabling Asal Uttar's defensive masterpiece. These frank assessments and unvarnished dispatches continue to be essential reading for students of the war. At the national level, Prime Minister Lal Bahadur Shastri articulated a clarifying credo, Jai Jawan, Jai Kisan, and maintained the political steadiness needed for a relatively young republic to absorb the shock of war, mobilize national will, and negotiate a ceasefire on terms compatible with India's interests. His death in Tashkent on January 11, 1966, hours after the peace accord, cast a long shadow over the nation's relief at the end of hostilities. Air Chief Marshal Arjan Singh, for his part, kept the IF aggressive but disciplined, aligning scarce resources to the war's tempo and avoiding attritional traps. Post-war, his elevation to five-star rank, Marshal of the Indian Air Force, was an institutional salute to his wartime leadership and a milestone in Indian Air Force history. Other gallant actions worth remembering. A war's memory is often built around murky battles, but countless acts of heroism took place in positions and patrols whose names don't always make it to the headlines. Artillery and engineers labored under shell fire to lay minefields through assault bridges and keep the roads open for armor and infantry. Their precise gunnery and improvisation were central to victories at Asal Uttar and the Sialkot sector. Infantry battalions across multiple regiments, Jat, Sikh, Rajput, Grenadiers, JK Rifles, and others, held company and platoon defenses through night assaults, particularly around Khemkaran, Barki, and Dograi. The canal battles near Lahore extracted a fearsome toll in close quarters fighting. Armored regiments besides the Pune Horse, Deccan Horse, Hudson's Horse, and others alternated between shock action and strategic anti-tank screens, adapting tactics to muddy fields and narrow approaches. Air defense gunners and fighter controllers worked against the clock to vector grenades and hunters against Savage and starfighters, helping achieve balance in the skies after a furious opening phase. What the heroes achieved and why it matters. By the time the ceasefire took effect on September 22, 1965, India had broadly stabilized the front in Jammu, seized ground in the Lahore and Sialkot sectors, and inflicted heavy material losses on Pakistani armor, most visibly in the Khemkaran Balk. The war ended without territorial realignment in Kashmir, but India had demonstrated a crucial capacity to fight a modern, combined arms war across multiple axes, to hold its nerve against armored thrusts, and to achieve operational objectives with limited resources and tight timelines. The Tashkent Declaration formalized the end of hostilities and mandated a pullback to pre-war positions, but the lessons of 1965 would echo into doctrine, training, and modernization for decades. Within that strategic outcome, the human stories remain the most compelling. Abdul Hamid showed that ingenuity and personal bravery could invert the logic of heavy metal, turning a jeep-mounted gun and the geometry of sugarcane fields into an anti-tank ambush that still inspires. Ardeshir Tarapore exemplified armored leadership, wounded, unshaken, and relentless in contact, embodying the ethos that a regiment's will is forged in its commander's example. Desmond Hayde and three Jat proved that disciplined aggression in darkness across water obstacles and into prepared positions can rewrite the map within a single night's work. Ranjit Singh Dayal and one para reminded us that mountain war is about lungs, legs, and willpower, about moving where the enemy thinks you cannot and holding what the enemy thinks you must abandon. Arjan Singh and Indian Air Force aircrew illustrated how air power multiplies the army's options by denying the adversary sanctuary in the air, by striking his notes, and by supporting troops in contact at the moment of need. A.B. Devayya's last combat, meanwhile, is a distillation of the fighter pilot's creed to complete the mission, protect the formation, and fight to the finish. The war's end and the memory we keep. The end of the war felt abrupt. One day there were artillery arcs and squadron strikes plans. The next, the tenuous quiet of a ceasefire. On January 10, 1966, Shastri and Ayub Khan signed the Tashkent Declaration. In the early hours of January 11, India lost its prime minister to a heart attack on foreign soil. The soldiers and airmen came home to garlands and to the hard work of rebuilding units, writing after action reports, and training for the future. But some recognitions took time. The Devayya Award, for instance, came years later as evidence was reconciled and the fog of war cleared. What endures is the standard set in 1965, expectations that when called upon, Indian soldiers, sailors, and airmen will adapt fast, fight hard, and look after one another in the crucible. The names of Hamid and Tarapore are taught to cadets as case studies in tactical audacity and leadership. The night crossing at Dograi is still rejected for its planning and nerve. The climb to Haji is invoked whenever young paratroopers learn about initiative at the platoon level. And Arjun Singh's calm professionalism remains the model for chiefs navigating the demands of modern war and public accountability. Closing tribute. Remembering the heroes of 1965 is not just about medals and citations, though those matter and their words carry weight. It is about how they fought with resourcefulness in the fields of Khemkaran, still in the armor battles near Sialkot, with stealth and stamina in the Pir Panjal, with verve and discipline in the air. It is also about why they fought to uphold a line on a map that for them represented homes and families and a promise to comrades. The 1965 war ultimately reaffirmed India's ability to withstand surprise, punish adventurism, and shape the tactical fight into a strategic stalemate favorable to its interests. 6 decades on, the echo of those days remains heard in regimental war cries on parade grounds, seen in the way a young officer smears dust on her palm before a briefing, felt when veterans gather and the room falls quiet at the mention of names like Abdul Hamid, A.B. Tarapore, Desmond Hayde, Ranjit Singh Dayal, A.B. Devayya, and Arjan Singh. Their service is a living inheritance. We honor it best by remembering it accurately, teaching it honestly, and striving, each in our own sphere, to meet the standard they set. Thank you very much for your patience. Request for like, subscribe, and share.